You have come here to listen, not merely with your ears, but with the trembling strings of your inner being. For what we are about to explore does not belong solely to the realm of intellect, but to the deep corridors of the psyche where shadows walk, where light trembles, where suffering is not an obstacle, but a gate. I want to speak to you as though you were standing before me, each of you carrying within your heart the unspoken story of endurance, the secret pain of having borne another's darkness, the strange transformation that comes when an empath has walked through the labyrinth of the narcissist and emerged alive. Many of you imagine that survival is the end of the story, but survival is only the threshold for what remains after one has absorbed the poison, after one has been hollowed out by another's insatiable hunger, is not simply a broken vessel, but the possibility of a new form, a new archetype rising out of ashes. And so the question we must face together is, who does the empath become after this descent, after this crucifixion of the soul? To begin, we must acknowledge what it means to be an empath in the Jungian sense. Not merely someone who feels too much, not merely one with porous emotional skin, but one who has been chosen by the unconscious to serve as a vessel for projection, for transference, for the unspoken and unclaimed shadows of others. The empath is often born in an atmosphere of psychic imbalance. From the very beginning, as a child, they attune themselves to the moods of parents, to the vibrations of the household, to the unuttered anxieties that saturate the air. Their sensitivity is a survival strategy, a way to regulate chaos by becoming the mirror that reflects what others cannot face. And so, when the narcissist appears in their life, it is not by accident, it is the inevitable magnetism of archetypes drawing one another into a dance as old as time. The narcissist is the embodiment of shadow, denied, the mask that must consume others to maintain its fragile godlike image. And the empath, by nature, becomes the one who holds, who absorbs, who swallows what the narcissist refuses to admit. But here lies the crucible. To absorb the narcissist's darkness is no small matter. It is to take into one's own bloodstream a venom that was never yours. It is to feel guilt that was projected upon you, shame that did not belong to you, rage that was planted in your chest like an alien seed. This absorption can feel like death. The empath may lose their sense of identity, drowning in confusion, questioning their sanity, caught in the hall of mirrors, where the narcissist insists that reality is only what the mask proclaims. But I tell you, in that very dissolution, in that very breaking, something archetypal begins. It is a journey of the wounded healer, the shamanic descent into the underworld, the dismemberment of the ego, so that the soul may awaken to its deeper vocation. When you survive such an ordeal, you do not remain the same. The empath who survives the narcissist is not the empath who first entered the labyrinth. There has been a death and a rebirth. You have carried the shadow of another. You have wrestled with the poison. And if you have not been utterly consumed, then you have been transformed. The unconscious, which demanded this trial, has also prepared within you the possibility of metamorphosis. For what is survival if not alchemy? The lead of suffering, the mercury of confusion, the sulfur of rage, all fused together in the psychic vessel until something new emerges. Gold. And so we ask again, who do you become? You become the one who knows darkness not as abstraction, but as intimacy. You become the one who no longer fears the abyss because you have dwelt in it. You become the one whose compassion is no longer naive, whose light is no longer unguarded, but whose soul carries the gravitas of one who has walked among devils and returned with eyes that see beyond masks. I want to illustrate this with a dream. Imagine a woman who dreams that she is in a great banquet hall. The tables are full of food, golden chalices overflowing with wine. But when she sits down to eat, the food turns to ashes in her mouth, and the wine becomes blood. She looks around and realizes that every guest at the table wears a mask, smiling, laughing, but behind the masks there are hollow sockets and gnashing teeth. Suddenly, she realizes she herself is wearing a mask. She rips it off and screams, but when she looks at her reflection in the chalice, she sees that her face has become luminous, scarred but radiant. She wakes trembling, knowing that she has glimpsed some terrible and beautiful truth. This dream is the psyche's way of revealing what it means to survive the banquet of the narcissist, to eat the ashes of illusion, to taste the bitterness of manipulation, to remove the mask and find that the face underneath, though scarred, shines with an authenticity that cannot be feigned. This transformation is not without cost. Let no one deceive you into thinking that emerging from the grip of the narcissist leaves you unscathed. There are wounds, and those wounds will ache. You may carry hypervigilance, distrust, the lingering echo of the narcissist's voice that whispers in the recesses of your mind. But those wounds are also inscriptions, symbols carved into your very being. They tell you that you have been through initiation, for survival is not the avoidance of pain. It is the ability to bear pain until its meaning begins to emerge. The empath who has survived becomes a keeper of knowledge, a carrier of shadow wisdom. You are no longer simply sensitive, you are wise. You know the scent of deception, you know the taste of false love. You can sense manipulation in the air, like smoke, long before the fire is visible. And this is no small gift. Though it was purchased at a price, you may ask, why must it be this way? Why must the empath suffer through the darkness of the narcissist in order to awaken? I answer, because the unconscious demands balance. The narcissist cannot carry their own shadow. They project it outward, and it must find a container. The empath, prepared from childhood to carry what is not theirs, becomes that container, but the unconscious does not leave them there. It brings them to a breaking point, to a crisis where the poison can no longer be endured. And at that moment, when everything collapses, When identity itself seems shattered, the psyche has the chance to reorganize on a deeper level. This is individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world demanded you to be. It is a perilous path, for many do not make it through intact, but those who do emerge with a clarity and strength unknown to those who have never wrestled with such darkness. There's a passage in the alchemical texts that speaks of the nigredo, the blackening. It is the stage where everything is dissolved, where the matter rots, where the light disappears. But it is precisely in this putrefaction that the seed of transformation is sown. The empath who has absorbed the narcissist's darkness enters their own nigredo. They feel destroyed, worthless, emptied. But if they endure, if they refuse to remain in the illusion, then from that black soil the white rose begins to bloom. And so, who does the empath become? They become the alchemist of their own suffering. They become the one who carries not only empathy but discernment. They become the one who no longer gives their soul away cheaply, for they know the cost of such sacrifice. They become, paradoxically, more whole. Now, listen carefully, for I must speak of the danger that remains. The empath, after surviving, may be tempted to harden their heart entirely, to close themselves off, to declare, never again will I feel, never again will I love, never again will I open. This is understandable. It is the psyche's way of protecting itself after devastation. But if this becomes permanent, then the alchemy is incomplete. To heal is not to become stone, it is to become gold. To become stone is merely another form of defense, another mask, and eventually the unconscious will tear it away. True survival means to reopen, but this time not as a lamb led to slaughter, but as a lion who knows its own strength. You will still feel deeply, but you will no longer be devoured by those feelings. You will still love, but you will not confuse love with sacrifice. You will still shine, but your light will not be for those who come only to drain it. This is the paradox of the empath who has survived. Your heart grows larger, but it is also sharper. You are both tender and fierce. Consider again the archetype of the wounded healer. The one who has been wounded in body or soul, and through that wound becomes capable of healing others. This does not mean you will seek out narcissists to save them. That is the old pattern, the trap of endless sacrifice. No, the healed empaths heal simply by embodying authenticity, by carrying a light that is no longer naive. You become a mirror in which others see their own possibilities. You may guide, you may comfort, you may teach, but you will not allow yourself to be consumed. In this way, the narcissist has paradoxically served your individuation. Their darkness forced you into the depths where you discovered your true strength. It is a brutal gift, but a gift nonetheless. And so I say to you, if you have absorbed the narcissist's darkness and survived, you are no longer merely empath. You are something beyond. You are one who has died and been reborn, one who has carried another's shadow and returned it to the abyss, one who has seen behind the mask and refused to become a mask yourself. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by what you have become through it, and what you have become is nothing less than the soul awakened to its own archetypal power. When we speak of becoming after survival, we must also speak of integration, for it is not enough to escape the labyrinth. One must carry out the treasure hidden in its depths. The empath who survives the narcissist stands at a crossroads. Either they repress what happened, burying it deep in their unconscious, where it festers, or they confront it with courage, allowing it to shape them into something greater. Integration requires a facing of the shadow, not the narcissist shadow only, but your own. For what was it in you that allowed the narcissist to enter, to feed, to remain? Was it love? Was it fear of abandonment? Was it the secret hunger to feel indispensable, to be the savior? These must be acknowledged, for if they are denied, the cycle repeats itself. This is not condemnation, but illumination. To bring these motives into the light is not to shame yourself, but to liberate yourself. You see, the empath's greatest danger is not only the narcissist without, but the unconscious narcissist within, the part that thrives on sacrifice because it grants a sense of importance, the part that longs to be chosen, even at the cost of the soul. When this is seen, when it is admitted, then the transformation is complete, for you no longer serve as an unconscious participant in the drama, but as a conscious actor who chooses differently. Think of the myth of Persephone, abducted into the underworld by Hades. She eats the pomegranate seeds, and therefore she cannot return to the world above unchanged. She belongs partly to the dark realm, partly to the light. So too with the empath who has eaten of the narcissist fruit. You can never return to innocence. And that is not a loss, but a sacred initiation. You will always carry with you the memory of the underworld, the knowledge of manipulation, the taste of ashes in your mouth. But this does not mean you are bound to despair. On the contrary, like Persephone, you become a mediator between worlds. You can descend into the darkness of another without losing yourself, and you can ascend into the light with greater depth. You are no longer naive about evil, but neither are you consumed by it. This balance is the mark of maturity, the sign of individuation. Let me give you another image. Imagine a man who dreams. He is walking through a dense forest at night. He carries a lantern, but the light flickers and barely illuminates the ground before him. He hears voices whispering among the trees, accusing him, mocking him, drawing him deeper into confusion. Suddenly, he stumbles into a clearing, and there in the center is a mirror standing upright. He approaches and sees his reflection, but the reflection is wearing chains. He touches the mirror, and the chains dissolve, but the reflection's eyes burn with fire. he awakens with a pounding heart, knowing he has encountered a part of himself he never wished to see. This dream, like the ordeal of surviving the narcissist, reveals the necessity of facing both bondage and freedom, both weakness and strength. The empath who has been bound by chains of guilt and self-doubt finds, in the act of survival, the possibility of fire in their own eyes, a fierceness that was hidden beneath the surface. The mirror shows both captivity and liberation. Which will you choose to embody? Now, we must pause here and reflect on what it means to carry darkness without being defined by it. The narcissist's poison does not simply vanish when the relationship ends. It lingers. Like smoke in the lungs, there may be moments when you hear their voice echoing in your mind, accusing you, belittling you, insisting that you were never enough. These echoes are not a sign of failure. They are the remnants of internalized projection. The task is not to silence them by force, but to confront them with the authority of your own awakened self. When the echo says, "You are worthless," you answer, "I have survived. Therefore I am more than you ever saw." When the echo says, "You will never be loved," you answer, "I have learned to love myself. Therefore I no longer hunger for your counterfeit affection." This dialogue within is the continuation of individuation. You are reclaiming the territory of your soul piece by piece, word by word, until the inner landscape no longer belongs to the ghost of the narcissist, but to you. Do not be deceived, however, into believing this process is swift. The unconscious does not move at the pace of the ego's impatience. Healing comes in waves, sometimes gently, sometimes like a storm that drags you back into despair just when you thought you were free. But even in those storms, remember, you are not who you were. You may feel the old pain, but you are no longer the same vessel. You have been cracked open, and through those cracks, light has entered. You are wiser now, more discerning, less willing to abandon yourself for the sake of another's illusions. And this, I say again, is no small victory. For the narcissist thrives only where illusions are maintained. The moment you refuse the illusion, their power over you collapses. You become untouchable, not because you are invulnerable, but because you are awake. What then is the destiny of the empath who has survived? It is not merely to live free of narcissists. That is too small a goal. Your destiny is to become a bearer of light forged in darkness, to embody a depth of compassion that does not confuse itself with martyrdom, to walk among others as a reminder that suffering, when faced, can become transformation. You are a symbol living among symbols. Others who are still trapped will recognize something in you. Though they may not understand it, they will feel your presence as both comfort and challenge. Comfort, because you understand their pain without judgment. Challenge, because your very being exposes their illusions. This is the paradoxical role of the survivor, to carry within you both balm and sword, to heal and to divide, to reveal the truth simply by existing as one who has seen and endured, let us consider the archetype of the phoenix rising from ashes. This image has become so common that its power risks being dulled. Yet if you meditate on it deeply, you see that it is no mere metaphor. The empath's old self truly burns away in the fire of the narcissist's darkness. What is reduced to ashes is the identity that once believed love must always mean giving without limit. That once confused empathy with self-annihilation, out of those ashes rises a being who knows their worth, who carries fire in their wings, who can fly above manipulation rather than sink beneath it. But unlike the mythic phoenix, this rebirth is not solitary. It carries within it a mission. You are reborn not only for yourself, but for the collective. The unconscious of humanity demands witnesses, and you become such a witness. You testify, even without words, that survival is possible, that darkness can be endured, that the soul can be remade. You may notice that after such a transformation, your very perception of reality shifts. What once seemed solid now appears as mask and archetype. You see more clearly the games people play, the personas they wear, the projections they cast. You may at times feel alienated, for once you have seen behind the curtain, it is difficult to forget. Yet this alienation is also a gift. It detaches you from illusions that once bound you. You are no longer so easily seduced by flattery, nor deceived by charisma, nor trapped by guilt. You stand outside the collective hypnosis. This can be lonely, yes, but it is also the beginning of true freedom. For freedom is not the absence of bonds only, it is the presence of awareness. I must emphasize again, do not despise what you have endured. For though it was cruel, though it nearly destroyed you, it has also awakened in you capacities that could not have been born otherwise. The narcissist, in their relentless hunger, served as the blacksmith's hammer against the metal of your soul. It hurt, it scarred, but it also shaped you. Now you are a vessel not of fragility but of strength. Your empathy has not died, it has deepened. You feel still, but you feel with eyes open. You love still, but you love with discernment. You give still, but you no longer confuse giving with disappearing. This is the alchemy of survival. There will be moments, I know, when you mourn the self you once were. You may miss the innocence, the unguarded openness, the purity of trust, but innocence is not the highest good. Wholeness is not pure light, but the union of light and shadow. The empath who has survived carries both within them. They are no longer angel nor victim. They are a whole human being, fierce and tender, luminous and scarred. They walk the earth as living paradox, and in this paradox lies the secret of true individuation. So I say to you now, you are not merely survivors, you are initiates. You have passed through a trial that stripped you bare, and what remains is not less than before, but more. Do not diminish yourself by saying, I am broken. Rather, say, I have been remade. Do not cling to bitterness, though bitterness is tempting, for it will calcify your wound into stone. Instead, hold your wound as sacred, as the place where the divine entered you, for it is in our wounds, not our perfections, that the soul reveals its true face. And you, empath, who has survived, carry that revelation within you. When the empath rises from the ashes of survival, there comes a strange silence. It is the silence after the storm, when the thunder has ceased, when the rain has stopped, and the earth still trembles with the memory of violence. Many mistake this silence for emptiness, for numbness, but it is not emptiness. It is the psyche resetting, preparing itself for a new orientation. In that silence, you may feel lost, stripped of the old identity that once found meaning in giving, in rescuing, in being the vessel of another's unspoken need. You may ask yourself, who am I now? If not the one who saves, if not the one who suffers. This question is the beginning of the deeper journey. For to lose the old answer is not to be empty, but to be open. The unconscious has carved out space within you, and it waits for a new image to take shape, an image not dictated by the narcissist, nor by the patterns of your childhood, but by the self itself, that archetype of wholeness that has been guiding you through the darkness all along. Do you see, then, how necessary the collapse was? Without it, you would still be circling in illusions, still mistaking sacrifice for love, still confusing empathy with destiny. The narcissist's shadow forced you into the crucible where falsehoods could no longer survive. And now, in this silence, the self whispers. It does not shout. It comes in dreams, in symbols, in sudden insights that seem to rise from nowhere. Perhaps you dream of walking through a ruined city, only to find a single flower blooming between the stones. Perhaps you dream of a child offering you a key, though you do not know which door it unlocks. Perhaps you find yourself drawn to solitude, to nature, to the quiet spaces where your own breath becomes your teacher. All of these are signs that the psyche is reorganizing, that the empath is no longer merely a receptacle of others, but a seeker of their own inner truth. It is here that the archetype of the hero enters. You may not think of yourself as a hero, for your path was not one of conquest, but of endurance. Yet endurance itself is heroic. To survive when another has fed on your light, to keep breathing when your soul has been poisoned, this is a form of heroism as profound as any battle. But unlike the hero of myths who slays the dragon, your dragon could not be slain, for it was within and without. It was in the narcissist, and it was in your own shadow. Your task was not to kill, but to endure until transformation occurred. And now, having endured, you carry within you the boon that the hero always brings back from the underworld: knowledge, knowledge of darkness, knowledge of illusion, knowledge of the resilience of the human spirit. And like all true heroes, You are called to use this knowledge not only for yourself but for others. The hero is never reborn for their own sake alone. They return to the village carrying fire, carrying medicine, carrying vision. But here, I must caution you, the empath who has survived is vulnerable to a new temptation. The temptation to define themselves solely by survival. You may cling to your story of suffering as though it were your identity, saying, "This is who I am, the one who was broken and survived." But identity built only on survival is still incomplete. You must go beyond survival into becoming. Survival is the seed. Becoming is the flower. If you stop at survival, you risk becoming bitter, forever circling around your wound. If you move into becoming, you allow the wound to be transfigured into strength, into compassion, into vision. The narcissist wanted to reduce you to a reflection of their emptiness. Survival ensured that did not happen. Now you must ensure that survival itself does not become a prison. Do not merely survive, become. What does this becoming look like? It may not be grand or dramatic. It may be as simple as speaking truth, where once you were silent. It may be as profound as saying no, where once you could only say yes. It may be as subtle as noticing manipulation in a glance and refusing to be drawn into it. But each act of authenticity, each moment of self-loyalty, each decision to remain awake, these are the marks of your becoming over time. These small acts weave together into a tapestry of transformation. You become a person who no longer betrays themselves for the sake of peace. You become one who can love without dissolving, who can feel without being consumed, who can give without disappearing. You become, at last, a soul that belongs to itself. The unconscious delights in paradox, and so it is with you. Having absorbed darkness, you now radiate a light that is different from before. It is not the innocent light of the unscarred empath, but the tempered light of one who knows shadow. Before, your light was soft, diffuse, easily swallowed by those who sought to exploit it. Now, your light is sharper, more defined, a light that can illuminate illusions without being extinguished by them. Others may feel it as both comfort and challenge, for your presence unconsciously demands authenticity. Those who wish to remain asleep may resist you, but those who long for truth will be drawn to you. This is part of your destiny. For the empath who has survived carries not only their own transformation, but the possibility of awakening others. Imagine now another dream. A woman dreams she's carrying a heavy sack filled with stones. She struggles, barely able to walk. At last she collapses and spills the sack open, and the stones scatter across the ground. But as she looks closely, she sees that some of the stones are jewels, glimmering in the moonlight. She realizes she has been carrying treasure all along. Though she thought it was only burden, this is the truth of your survival. You thought you were only carrying pain, shame, to guilt, but hidden within these were jewels, resilience, discernment, depth, wisdom. Now that the sack has spilled open, you see what was there all along. The task is to claim the jewels, to polish them, to wear them as signs of what you have endured. Do not throw them away in disgust, for they are the gifts hidden in the burden. The deeper truth is this: who you become after absorbing the narcissist's darkness is no longer merely an empath. You become an oracle of sorts, one who sees beyond appearances. You have developed a sixth sense for deception, a sensitivity not only to emotions but to archetypes at play. You can perceive the shadow moving in others, the mask shifting, the projection falling. This is not paranoia, but perception. It is what happens when one has lived among masks and has learned to distinguish between the false and the true. This capacity is dangerous, for it isolates you, but it is also sacred, for it allows you to serve. You become a guide for others who are still trapped, not by preaching, not by forcing, but simply by embodying the truth that survival and transformation are possible. Yet, I must tell you something more. The narcissist is not only an outer figure, it is also an inner archetype. You survived the narcissist outside, but the work now is to face the narcissist within. For each of us carries within us the temptation to inflate, to deny our own shadow, to feed on others for the sake of the ego's hunger. If you do not confront this inner narcissist, then you risk becoming what you once despised. Survival alone does not prevent this. Only integration does. When you recognize the narcissist within you, the part that wants to be worshipped, that fears vulnerability, that seeks to control, then you are truly free. For freedom is not the absence of outer oppressors. It is the mastery of inner forces. The empath who becomes whole is one who has seen both the empathic child within and the narcissistic shadow within, and has united them in the self's embrace. This is why I speak of individuation. For individuation is the reconciliation of opposites. You are no longer only the sensitive child who absorbs, nor the hardened survivor who resists, but the integrated being who holds both. You can be strong and gentle, discerning and compassionate, fierce and tender. You do not cling to one identity, but allow the wholeness of your soul to unfold. And in this wholeness, you find freedom. For freedom is not the power to control others, as the narcissist believes, but the power to be yourself without fear, without illusion, without dependence on masks. This is what you are becoming, step by step, dream by dream, act by act. So when you ask, who am I now after all this? The answer cannot be given in a single word. You are not only empath, not only survivor, not only wounded healer, you are all of these and more. You are the paradox, the mystery, the living symbol of what it means to carry darkness and still shine. You are the reminder that the soul cannot be destroyed, that even when poisoned it can transform the venom into medicine. You are the phoenix, the Persephone, the hero, the alchemist. You are the one who has walked through death and discovered life on the other side. And now we arrive at the culmination, the place where the journey of survival, of descent and return reveals its ultimate meaning. You have asked, who does the empath become after absorbing the narcissist's darkness and surviving? We have traced the stages of death and rebirth, of shadow and alchemy, of silence and awakening. But the final truth cannot be expressed only in psychological terms. It must be spoken in the language of the soul. For what has taken place is not merely healing, it is initiation. The empath who has survived has crossed the threshold into a new mode of being, one that carries both the fragrance of eternity and the weight of human fragility. To describe this is difficult, for language falters before mystery. Yet we must try, for the psyche demands articulation of what it has endured, lest it remain unformed within. When you survive the narcissist, you have confronted evil, not evil as an abstraction, but evil as intimate reality. You have seen how the mask can devour, how charm can conceal cruelty, how love can be twisted into a weapon. You have felt the hollowness that exists in those who refuse their shadow, the abyss behind their eyes. To face this and not collapse is no small thing. It is to look into the heart of the collective shadow, for the narcissist is not only a person, but a manifestation of what society itself represses: the hunger for domination, the terror of vulnerability, the refusal of truth. To survive them is to carry within yourself a piece of collective work. You have looked into what most would rather deny, and in looking, you have become a bearer of knowledge. This knowledge cannot be forgotten, nor should it be. It is the foundation of your transformation. But transformation is not the end. Integration is. To integrate means to weave the darkness you have faced into the fabric of your being, not as poison, but as wisdom. You no longer say, "That was not me." Instead, you say, "It touched me, but it did not define me. It scarred me, but it also marked me with meaning." This is why your wounds matter. They are not mistakes to be erased, but inscriptions carved by the unconscious. They tell you that you have walked the path of descent and that you carry the authority of experience. Authority, not in the sense of power over others, but in the sense of authenticity. Others may argue with your ideas, but they cannot argue with your being. You embody survival, and that embodiment itself is testimony. Here lies the paradox of your destiny. You are no longer merely empath, for empathy in its naive form has died. You are no longer merely survivor, for survival alone is insufficient. You have become something more ambiguous, more powerful, more dangerous, more holy. You are the wounded healer, but also the shadow knower, the one who has walked both light and darkness. You are a reminder that humanity cannot be divided into victims and perpetrators. Light and shadow innocence, and evil. You know now that all dwell within the psyche. You have met them in others, and you have met them in yourself. And because you know this, you can no longer be deceived by appearances. You see beneath masks, you see the archetypes moving behind faces. You feel the currents of shadow and light moving through conversations, relationships, societies. This vision is both gift and burden, for it separates you from the illusions that sustain the many, but it also grants you freedom for truth. Though it isolates, always liberates. At this stage, you may feel estranged. You may walk through the world and see what others do not see. You may notice how easily people fall under the spell of charisma, how they worship images, how they surrender their souls to illusions. And you may feel weary, for you cannot return to that innocence. Yet, I tell you, do not despair, for your estrangement is also your vocation. You are not called to fit into the old patterns, but to reveal new possibilities. You are a seed of individuation in a collective that prefers conformity. You are a whisper of authenticity in a chorus of masks. You may not be understood by many, but you will be recognized by those who are ready, and when they recognize you, they will see in your scars the map of their own survival. Let us return, then, to the language of dreams. Imagine a man who dreams. He is standing on the shore of a vast ocean at night. The waves crash violently, and he feels afraid, for he knows he could be swept away. But then he notices that the water glows faintly, as though illuminated from within. He steps into the ocean, expecting to drown, but instead he floats, carried not by fear, but by light. He awakens and weeps, knowing that the very thing he feared drowning has become the very thing that carried him. This is the essence of your transformation. What once threatened to annihilate you has become the element that sustains you. The narcissist darkness, though destructive, forced you into the ocean of the unconscious, and there you discovered that you could float, not because you were strong, but because the self was carrying you all along. Survival revealed to you that the psyche is larger than any individual wound, that the soul contains depths you had not known, and so, who have you become? You have become one who trusts the depths. You no longer fear darkness, for, you know, it is where the seeds of light are hidden. You no longer fear suffering, for you know it is the forge of meaning. You no longer fear betrayal, for you know that even betrayal cannot destroy the soul's capacity to be remade. You live now with a different rhythm, a different gravity. You do not rush to fix, to rescue, to dissolve into others. You stand rooted in yourself, and from that rootedness you extend compassion. It is not the compulsive compassion of the old empath, but the steady compassion of the awakened soul. You give not because you must, but because you choose, and in choosing you are free. This freedom is the fruit of individuation. It is the freedom to be yourself without mask, without pretense, without the compulsion to please or to save. It is the freedom to embrace your shadow, to admit your anger, your fear, your hunger, and still know you are whole. It is the freedom to look into the eyes of another, whether they wear the mask of narcissism or the face of innocence, and to see the archetypes at play without losing yourself in them. This is no small freedom. It is the freedom for which the soul longs, the freedom that makes life worth living. And so, my friends, when you ask, who do I become after surviving? The answer is this: you become yourself. At last, not the self defined by others, not the self projected upon you, not the self sacrificed to illusions, but the self that has always been waiting in the depths. You become the one who can say with truth and with power, I am. And that I am is not arrogance, not narcissism, but authenticity. It is the voice of the soul emerging from the silence, declaring its existence without apology. It is the culmination of individuation, the union of shadow and light, the reconciliation of suffering and meaning, the awakening of the eternal within the temporal. If you listen closely, you may hear, even now, the voice of the self within you. It does not flatter, it does not deceive, it does not manipulate, it whispers, you are whole. You always were, even when you thought you were broken. You always were, even when you carried another's shadow. You always were, even when you thought you would not survive. You are whole, and now you know it. And this knowing is the gift of your journey, for to know wholeness is to live no longer in fear, but in trust, trust of yourself, trust of the psyche, trust of the mystery that sustains us all. This, then, is the final transformation. You are no longer empath, no longer victim, no longer even survivor. You are a soul awakened to its own depth, a being who carries within them both darkness and light, and who walks the earth with the authority of one who has endured. You are the answer to the question you once feared to ask. You are the one who has become